establishment or the deep state. And Trump is a transactional president. He's not ideological. That is why he has changed the fundamental premise of American foreign policy. He's deprioritized bilateral strategic ties with erstwhile allies like India or Japan or Australia, who were being groomed in the past to take on China. So our relationship with Trump, which is for the next 3 years, is temporary, transactional, tactical. But it has given Pakistan strategic space. However, we should be very careful about silly ideas like Pasni or that sort of thing. There's no room for that. And I think that doesn't make sense at all. It's absolute nonsense. We cannot have that kind of thing because it sends the wrong signal. As I said in my statement on that Pasni issue, Pasni is 70 miles from Gwadar, which is the centerpiece of CPEC, and 100 miles from Iran. So how can we have Americans sitting, have a great game in our front yard? And so that's not, so I think it was a pipe dream and it's not going to happen anyway. So when we look at the future, I think I'll just make 2 comments before I conclude. One at the global level, one at the domestic level. At the end of this month, President Xi Jinping and President Trump are expected to have a meeting in Seoul at the APEC summit. I think 28th or 29th of October. I think they'll make a deal on the trade and tariff front. There will not be a new Cold War with China immediately. And probably Xi Jinping will invite Trump to visit China in 2026. And in return, Trump will invite Xi Jinping to visit the United States of America. And there will be a broad understanding. And I think one good part of that expected understanding would be that it will calm things down in South Asia. Because both China and the United States have a similar worldview when it comes to certain issues, including the Korean Peninsula, including Middle East, and including South Asia. And I think that what Mr. Kulkarni was pointing out, I think the first process of that will start because already in India the post-Modi transition has begun. Mr. Modi is in the same position that Nehru was in after 1962, after the thrashing given by the Chinese. He is politically wounded, and I think Modi is politically dead. We have to look at that transition. For Pakistan, yes, I think the key issues are, we do not have a counter-terror strategy. We have failed abysmally in that. China is concerned on 3 counts vis-a-vis Pakistan. Number 1, we promised them foolproof security. We have failed to provide that because there have been 8 attacks in the last 5 years where 14 Chinese and 18 Pakistanis have been killed. That's unacceptable, and we do not yet have formulated a clear, comprehensive counter-terror strategy. Yes, there's Indians out there also, there's the TTPs out there, but we should have a counter strategy for that. We have not had that. Secondly, we promised the Chinese one window operation. We have failed to provide that. And the third thing the Chinese complain is that you Pakistanis are always fighting with each other. And the last time I met them at a seminar, they said, well, you know what one of the top experts told me? Ask not what China can do for Pakistan, ask what you can do for Pakistan. So I think we need to focus on that. And finally, I think the core issue in Pakistan still remains the political polarization. There's no doubt Hassan Iqbal won the election fair and square on Form 45. But the majority of his colleagues sitting in the cabinet have been fraudulently elected on the basis of Form 47. So I think that this kind of a fake mandate cannot continue for long. We should have a healing touch. All political prisoners, including Imran Khan, should be released, and the missing persons and others who have been incarcerated for no rhyme or reason should be released. If we can talk to Modi, if we can talk to TTP, why can't we talk to our own people? I think the time has come. In 1999, I was Minister for Information, and I had the privilege and honor of being the minister in waiting to President Nassi. She's also here. She accompanied me. And also I'm privileged to be in the podium with Najam Sethi Saab, with Ahsan Iqbal Saab, and Azaz Chaudhry Saab. When we talk of this world of turbulence and transformation and the historic changes that have taken place in the last few months, I'm reminded, Hamid, of a very famous saying by the great revolutionary Lenin. Lenin said, and I quote, "There are decades when nothing happens. And then there are weeks when decades happen." I think this is that epoch. And let's look at the big picture first. The changing global geopolitical landscape. What are some of the world leaders saying? President Xi Jinping says that we are witnessing once-in-a-century changes. Changes that have not been seen in a century, we are seeing them before our own eyes. President Putin says that we are spearheading a new world order which will be more inclusive and more representative of the planet Earth. The President of France, Monsieur Macron, told his ambassadors last year in Paris, and I quote, "We are witnessing the end of 300 years of Western hegemony." And recently I was seeing the statement of the European Commissioner, Madame Ursula von der Leyen, and she said very candidly in a statement in Madrid that the West as we know it has ceased to exist. So basically the global center of gravity is shifting inexorably, irreversibly from the West to the East in what we can say would eventually be the Asian century, with something that had been predicted by Allama Iqbal 90 years ago. Dekh mashriq se ubarte hue suraj ko dekh, gara khab chini sambalne lage, हिमालय के चश्मे उबलने लगे, गया दौर सरमायादारी गया, तमाशा दिखा के मदारी गया. The rise of China, the rise of the East was predicted by Allama Iqbal 90 years ago. And you can see, ladies and gentlemen, that China has emerged today as the first non-Western, non-white competitor to Western hegemony in key areas of science and technology. And I'd like to draw your attention to two studies that have been done in the West which point to that. The Economist had a cover story some time back. China, the scientific superpower. And the Economist said that the old science order dominated by the United States, Europe and Japan is now coming to an end. And they mentioned that 40% of new original empirical papers on artificial intelligence are being published in China. 15% in the US, 15% also in Europe, and rest a little bit here and there. And they also mentioned that among the top 10 science and technology educational institutions in the world, 6 are in China. The other study which focuses on this area of the US-China rivalry was done by Harvard University by their eminent professor, Professor Graham Allison. It's a 52-page study, The Great Tech Rivalry, China versus the United States, and it's on the internet. And that says that the People's Republic of China is overtaking the United States in high-tech manufacturing in areas like artificial intelligence, 5G, robotics, cloud computing, STEM, S-T-E-M, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And already you can see in terms of trade, there are 193 members of the United Nations. Out of those 193, 140 of those countries have more trade with China than they have with the United States. And that's why Trump's tariff and trade war with China has totally failed. So when we see this big picture in this context, Hamid mentioned about the emerging new global order in our vicinity in the Middle East and South Asia. And we can see that there are three major new realities unfolding before our eyes. There is the American failure, abject failure in the Middle East, which was alluded to by Dr. Masooma Hassan Saiba, to protect their Arab allies against Israeli aggression, which has led to a loss of confidence among these Arab countries, Gulf countries included, about the credibility of American commitments to preserve, protect, or promote their security or regional stability. Because historically, ladies and gentlemen, there was this understanding in the Middle East, what is termed as oil for security. In return for an uninterrupted supply of cheap Arab oil, the United States would protect these regimes, these states. And the US, as you know, has about 30,000 troops stationed in 22 military bases in the Muslim world in the Middle East region. So that is the first failure. The second failure we see in South Asia ourselves, where India failed to establish a new normal based on their military might to establish their hegemony over the region and over Pakistan. And you have already mentioned about what happened in May. And I would say Mr. Hassan Iqbal referred to 28th of May, 1998. And at that time, I was the Minister for Information. And I remember when Mia Saab asked me in 1998, we were on 11th of May when we heard about the Indian nuclear tests. We were in Almaty in Kazakhstan. And he said, what do you think? And my instinctive view was, मैंने पंजाबी में कहा, Mia Saab कड़ाके कर दो. This is now or never. We'll not get this opportunity. India has provided us this opportunity, and we seized that opportunity. And I think May 1998 and May 2025 were the finest hours in Pakistan's diplomacy, defense, and national security, how we handled that situation. And also, reinforcing the Indian failure vis-a-vis Pakistan, a numerically smaller country, and also in terms of size and physical strength, that the international community led by the West did not support India in its endeavors, unlike Pulwama, unlike the past. And that is also a very big change. The third big change in the Middle East is the failure of Israel in three key areas. The failure of Israel to engineer regime change in Iran, which was part of the Greater Israel plan, and that failed miserably. Like the Indians at the hands of the Pakistanis, the Israelis at the hands of the Iranians got a bloody nose. For 12 days, Netanyahu was sleeping not in his bedroom but in his bunker, while the Iranian missiles were raining on Tel Aviv, Haifa, Mossad headquarters, military headquarters, Prime Minister's house of Netanyahu, and also half of the Weizmann Institute, which is one of the leading research institutes on science and technology in Haifa, was destroyed. And that is why 46,000 Israelis filed returns for compensation, because either their apartments, their homes, their cars, or their properties or businesses were destroyed when Israel got a thrashing from the Iranians. And that's why they went running like the Indians to Trump for a ceasefire. And the third big failure of Israel, which is a very important failure, is that for the first time since the creation of Israel, Western public opinion has changed, has shifted, turned against Israel in a massive manner. Whether it's the 200,000 who turned out in Sydney or the 300,000 that turned out in Amsterdam, or even the 100,000 who turned out in Tel Aviv or other capitals, that is a very important development, I think, a sea change. So Israel can no longer count on the 100% support of a unified West, including the United States, on this issue. So given this context, we should be very clear about the nature of our relationship with China and the United States. With China, our relationship is strategic, solid, and substantive, because China has stood by Pakistan like a rock on all issues at all times, just as Pakistan has supported all the core interests of China through these 5 decades of a special relationship. Conversely, our relationship with the United States, and I would like to make a correction here, the relationship is with Trump. Because Trump is the first president in America after John F. Kennedy who is not a representative of the traditional American security